2020 started like most winters. It was cold, but we went out. We skied, cycled, played hockey, ice raced, and walked through our city parks. Spring was just around the corner.
We're facing an unprecedented time in our history.
We don't know exactly how long this is going to take.
Today, I'm ordering the mandatory closure of all non-essential workplaces in the province of Ontario.
What we need to do is flatten that down.
We'll effectively suspend all travel.
Go directly home and stay in your house.
Travelers abroad were asked to come home. The borders were closed. We saw the biggest crash in the stock market since the 90s. Locally, we were beginning to prepare.
To all the snowbirds and Canadians returning home from abroad, you must self-isolate.
We are extremely concerned.
Well, I guess it's been a little bit like a roller coaster.
So we knew this virus was coming.
Things started to change here at Chartwell on March 17th.
Well, we were away on vacation.
That was a very dynamic day.
It was definitely really surprising, right?
It was definitely a whirlwind.
We laid off almost all of our staff. The big announcement that really triggered Roots to Harvest was the announcement of schools closing.
For us, I can tell you it began weeks before that.
So I had no idea. People were sending me all kinds of bad emails and text messages about things that were going on.
The Dow Jones Industrial average sinking down almost 3,000 points.
The coronavirus crisis is changing so fast.
This virus is probably with us beyond this season or beyond this year, and I think eventually the virus will find a foothold and we will get community-based transmission.
And that was the day the province brought down the provincial order.
Air Canada taking a big hit. It is suspending its service to China until April, we know now.
It was definitely scary.
Well, we're getting the news that we're having to shut down.
For us, there was a lot of assessing right away.
A lot of us have had to socially distance from our families.
The hockey tournament, there was a hockey tournament that weekend, that started to go.
You sort of began to get a sense of what might be coming. I went to unannounced, I dropped in and said, what do you know? What can you tell me? You're the medical professional. Point being, we started to prepare. We were sort of starting to get a sense of things. It was just gaining momentum.
It really started to fall pretty quickly, and I don't think anybody saw how quickly.
It was an eye-opener to realize that there might not be a job to come back to after realizing what this pandemic.
We started asking screening questions. We were required to do screening.
I had already reduced most of my staff.
When everything shut down, our clientele changed dramatically. Some routes went maybe a 60% reduction in the number of riders.
And we thought, okay, maybe a few weeks they'd be closed, but 3 weeks became 4 weeks and 6 weeks and 8 weeks. So that has yet to open up, so we've had to conduct different business a little differently.
Make sure we responded to any of the fears or the special needs that some of our staff had. Some were within the vulnerable population, so some staff chose to go off during the pandemic.
So that's been difficult. Our lives have changed drastically with going home and trying to keep our families safe from what we might pick up at work.
And then we were looking down at closing down entirely, which as a self-employed person is a very daunting type of thing, because not only are we going to lose our jobs, we're going to lose our business and eventually our homes.
On March 14th, we issued an order to all of our staff that there was no international travel.
It became clear by the beginning of March that we were not going to escape having many more cases, and that we were going to have to take some of the more drastic measures.
And we knew right away that families would be affected by not having student nutrition programs operate anymore.
But we wanted to reassure everyone that they would have a job to come back to, and that we would support them through it, whether it be scheduling changes. We made some of those even before March 16th. We had made a decision, we're closing the complex, long-term care, child care. we forced a few decisions, let's put it that way. There were some difficult decisions within the corporation and with my office, because at that time we were even really unsure as who gets to decide on what.
My daughter hasn't seen me in over a month.
Work. It wasn't until probably 2 to 3 days before going back to work where I had a tough time sleeping. Anxiety started to go up because you hear all the bad stuff about COVID-19.
And it directly affects us being on the front lines, which also comes with its fair share of anxiety. And our paramedics are definitely having to go through a lot in these times. I feel that they are handling it very well.
Thunder Bay fared well. When the stay-at-home recommendation was issued, there was not very much traffic. You looked out in the front of the building here on Balmoral Street, it was like a ghost street. You see vehicles every once in a while.
The biggest thing for us was just wanting to make sure that everyone was safe, right? Everyone has families. We're all really close. We've worked together for a really long time, and some of us we haven't, but we're close with anyway, right? And we wanted to ensure very quickly that everyone and all their families were safe. And once we had a chance to do that, it was easy to sort of look outward at how we could help to work with the community as well.
I tried to get hand sanitizer and I was being blocked, and I actually talked to one of my suppliers, and he basically said to me, the government isn't sending it out, they're saving it for the hospitals. And this was back in the early part of February.
There were certainly some changes and some kind of apprehension on everybody's part, and as it progressed, which was fairly quickly.
So before my first shift back, I didn't sleep. I think I slept for an hour that night altogether. I was so anxious about what was going to happen, what work was going to be like, just the procedures, the contamination of people. You don't know who has it, who doesn't have it. And so now for us, long-winded I guess, everybody we go to, and things have changed in the sense that we go to a call, everybody basically screens positive for COVID-19 now. So instead of both of us going into a house initially, one person gets suited up and goes into the house initially. And if that person is critically ill or serious, then they have to come rushing back out to get the other person to hurry up to get inside to help them out, kind of deal. Where we didn't have that before. Before we'd both go in together and we could deal with that real-time kind of deal.
The safety was paramount for us because we knew nothing about COVID. We were watching it as it traveled across China and was moving across the world, and then got into Canada. Many restrictions we put in was for the safety of our staff. One of the difficult things with the officers is we had 2 staff cars, so officers were always in close proximity.
Especially when businesses started shutting down and things were, it was very different, almost kind of something like probably none of us ever seen before. It was quiet out in the streets, traffic was quiet, and for us as a police service, we were still we were still coming to work and going to calls. And
then we saw a number of clients being really tentative about us coming into the home, really paranoid about what was going to come. Of course, we really had no idea what was going to come, how overwhelmed were the hospitals going to be, how overwhelmed would we be. And clients were really nervous about us coming into the home.
I actually Davey and I started to have a game plan, what was going to happen if they shut down our economy and shut down everything. I honestly didn't think that they were going to do it to the extent that they did.
As an addendum to that, we've also had numerous businesses, establishments, restaurants drop us off at our workplace, at our main base at Junot. Food, beverages, smoothies, wraps, sandwiches, bakings, all kinds of stuff. We've been so fortunate. People have been actually spoiling us with lots of goods, lots of food, lots of meals. It's been fantastic. It's really very much appreciated.
It's been a little tough, especially when Jay's working his 12-hour shifts, because then I'm home working, and the job I do it's like a confidential job, so I have to kind of keep myself in a space where the kids aren't coming in and out all the time. So it's kind of juggling the job plus looking after the kids plus the dinners and the cleaning and Yeah, it's been a little tough. And the schooling, it's like being a teacher as well as everything else.
Well, everybody was nervous, right? No one really knew what was going on. So we figured the best that we could do was to really double down on as many procedural issues as we possibly could to make it as safe as for everyone that we could. And from there, there were some people that had different health issues and some people that were a bit nervous and some people that needed to take some time off work or different times they couldn't come in. We made the schedule optional. If anyone needed to step back, that was completely fine and they were supported as well.
But COVID was very different, I think, for me and probably lots of other police officers and other first responders and all these frontline workers, in that it's not just something that would affect me or something could happen to me. It's that I couldn't even know I'm doing it, but I bring it home to my family or to my little girl or to my wife or to my parents or somebody, and it could have some very serious ramifications. So
I can only imagine with our frontline officers and our staff that leave the building to do their duties, the stress is on their families. They're very understanding. I've been told that some of the staff here have given their parents are taking care of their children for weeks at a time in order for them to be at work and not to infect their kids.
So the big concern was that now, we're going to work, we're putting ourselves at risk. Now I run the risk of exposing my daughter to this, which is a horrific thought. But what we did was that we ended up having my little girl go stay with my parents. So instead of going there for a day here and there or out overnight, she went there the week after March break for at the time the foreseeable future.
We still arrested people, which was scary for the officers because there was always rumors that someone would have COVID, or if they were transporting a prisoner, the prisoner would say that they have COVID, then the officers would have to transport to the hospital so they would get tested.
Like I always thought they needed to. I was glad they did. And I think we're in a far better position because of how they handled it. And a lot of credit, honestly, to Patty Hadju, because she's been really, that woman has risen to this occasion as far as I'm concerned.
People worked from home. Students learned from home. Malls were closed and only essential businesses were allowed to open. Lineups to get essentials resembled third world countries. The streets of Thunder Bay looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. But the Thunder Bay spirit was alive and well. We learned to adapt. Not only did we adapt, we became stronger as a community. That's part 2, next.